on the door, it said for an appointed time. And as I began to read it, the door began to shake even more violent, and I couldn't get in the door. But something told me, I was like, man, I think this is the lake of fire, because the fire was coming underneath the crack of the door, and the fire on the edge of the door, it was just unbelievable. And so I couldn't get in the door. There was no doorknob or anything like that. And out of nowhere, I heard a voice coming from under the door. And some kind of way, the Spirit of God his hand came from under the door, and it grabbed my eyes. It grabbed my eyes, and the Lord said, come, I want to show you something. And it dragged my eyes underneath the door. And I went inside this room, and it was dark, and the Spirit of God lit the whole place up. And I literally saw what seemed to be a big old bowl. A big old bowl. And inside the bowl was like a lake that was made out of fire. And I seen souls screaming and crying and trying to run to the edge. And the edge was so thin, it reminds me of a bowl from the top that had no bottom, so it just went deep down. And the edge was so thin that people were coming, souls kept trying to come to the edge, screaming to stop the burning and stop the pain and torment to get to the edge, and they didn't have enough strength to even pull themselves up. And I began to weep, I began to cry, and from the screams that I heard and the people crying out for another chance, for hope and for help to stop the burning, and it seemed as if the deeper down they went, the hotter it got. And there was so many souls in this lake of fire that I began to cry and scream in agony and pain. And I said, God, please help me, get me out of this place. God, I don't want to be here, help me. And I began to cry and scream, and God, and I literally saw God grab my head and pull me back from under the door and came out. And I began to scream and cry, and the Lord began to tell me, he said, son, tell my people this is the pending judgment. He said, even if they don't believe, doesn't mean it don't exist. He said, tell my people, I want you to warn them that the lake of fire is real and is hungry for disobedient souls. Tell my people that this is the pending judgment and it's real.